I used to think my anger was justified. That was the lie that kept it alive. I told myself it was reasonable, even righteous. People were careless, disrespectful, loud, wrong, and someone had to react. Someone had to feel it. Someone had to carry the weight of it. What I didn't realize then was that anger was not responding to what people were doing to me. It was revealing what was ruling me. The truth is uncomfortable, so let me start with it. Anger is rarely about the moment that triggers it. It is about the throne inside you and who is sitting on it. Scripture says something most people skip past too quickly. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Not the situation, not the stress. The heart, which means anger does not come from traffic, insults, betrayal, delays, or disrespect. Those things expose it. They don't create it. I learned this the hard way. There was a season when everything irritated me. Conversations felt like attacks. Silence felt like rejection. Correction felt like humiliation. I could quote Bible verses and still explode internally. I could pray and still simmer. I didn't yell much, but my mind was a battlefield of rehearsed arguments and imagined confrontations. I was calm on the outside and burning on the inside, which Scripture calls something even worse. Jesus said anger in the heart is already murder in seed form. That verse haunted me. What bothered me most was that I was trying to follow God, and yet I was constantly disturbed by people. That contradiction gnawed at me, because Scripture also says, "Great peace have those who love your law." Nothing causes them to stumble. Nothing. Not some things. Not most things. Nothing. So either the Bible was exaggerating or I was misunderstanding peace. I began to notice something strange. The angriest moments came when my sense of control was threatened, when plans changed, when people didn't respond how I expected, when I felt unseen, unappreciated, or interrupted. And slowly, painfully, I realized my anger wasn't defending righteousness. It was defending my ego. James writes, "The anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." That verse doesn't leave room for exceptions. Not justified anger. Not understandable anger. Not stress-induced anger. It simply states a fact. Human anger cannot accomplish God's work, which means every time I held on to it, I was choosing something that could never produce what I claimed to want. The Bible never tells us to suppress anger by pretending it doesn't exist. It tells us to uproot it by changing what we value. Jesus' life makes this uncomfortably clear. He was insulted constantly, misunderstood, accused, mocked, betrayed, interrupted, delayed, and yet he was unbothered in a way that feels almost offensive to modern sensibilities. Children pulled at him, crowds pressed him, leaders tested him, enemies plotted against him, and Scripture repeatedly says he withdrew to pray, not to react. When he was silent before his accusers, it wasn't weakness, it was authority. Isaiah prophesied it. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, he opened not his mouth. Silence is not the absence of power. Sometimes it is the clearest sign of it. I used to think being unbothered meant not caring. Scripture taught me the opposite. Being unbothered means caring so deeply about eternal things that temporary irritations lose their grip. Paul writes from prison, "I have learned to be content in whatever situation I am in." Learned, not gifted, not automatic. Learned, which means peace is not a personality trait. It is a practice posture. The Bible does not say people will stop provoking you. Jesus promised the opposite. In this world you will have trouble. The promise is not a trouble-free life. The promise is an untroubled heart. But take heart, he said, I have overcome the world. That sentence reframed everything for me. If Christ has overcome the world, then the world does not get control of my emotional state unless I let it. If he reigns, then my reactions must answer to him. One verse began to dismantle my anger piece by piece. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stirs up anger. I realized I wasn't just responding to anger. I was multiplying it. Every sharp thought I indulged, every sarcastic response I rehearsed, every internal accusation I nurtured was feeding the very thing I claimed to hate. Scripture calls anger fire. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself. It tends only to evil. Fire is not neutral. If it is not extinguished, it spreads. The Bible never treats anger casually because it knows where it leads. But here is the turning point most people miss. The Bible doesn't just tell us to stop being angry. It tells us what replaces anger when it loses its grip. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Slowness is not passivity. It is discipline. It is choosing delay in a world addicted to reaction. When you slow down, you give truth time to surface and lies time to dissolve. Another verse struck me with uncomfortable clarity. Love is patient. Love is kind. It is not easily angered. Not easily, which means when anger comes easily, love is not leading. Something else is. I had to face a hard question. Did I want to be right, or did I want to be Christ-like? Because Scripture rarely allows both at the same time. Jesus was often right and still chose restraint. He could have defended himself at every turn. He didn't because he trusted the Father to vindicate him. That is where anger begins to die, when you stop demanding immediate justice and start trusting ultimate justice. Romans says, "Do not avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God." That verse is not telling you to be weak. It is telling you to step off a throne that was never yours. Anger often comes from playing judge in situations where God never asked you to rule. I noticed something else. The more time I spent in Scripture, the less reactive I became. Not because people change, but because my perspective did. The Bible constantly pulls your attention upward. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. When your focus shifts, your triggers lose their power. Jesus said something radical in the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Meekness is not timidity. It is strength under control. It is power that chooses restraint. Only someone secure can afford to be meek. The Bible never promises that you will never feel the spark of irritation. It promises that you don't have to obey it. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Overcome implies conflict. Victory implies resistance. I began to see anger differently. It was not an enemy to fight directly. It was a signal that something mattered to me more than it should. Reputation, comfort, control, approval. When those idols were threatened, anger rushed in to defend them. Jesus addresses this at the root when he says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Anger guards treasure. If something angers you deeply, it has revealed what you are protecting. The Bible's solution is not emotional numbness. It is reordered love. When God becomes the highest treasure, everything else becomes negotiable. Insults lose their sting. Delays lose their urgency. Criticism loses its power. You can still feel pain, but you're no longer ruled by it. There's a verse that quietly dismantled my need to react. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Stillness feels irresponsible to anger, but Scripture insists it is where deliverance begins. Even Jesus, in his final moments, entrusted himself to the Father. Peter writes, "When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly." That phrase stayed with me. Continued entrusting. Not once. Continually. Over and over. Anger thrives where trust is absent. The more I practice this, the more I notice a strange freedom emerging. I didn't need to correct every misunderstanding. I didn't need to win every argument. I didn't need to react to every offense. Peace became less fragile. Silence became less scary. Scripture never says anger will make you strong. It says patience will. Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city. That verse dismantles our cultural obsession with dominance. According to God, self-control is greater than conquest. And then there's the verse that reframes everything. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience. Fruit grows naturally when the root is healthy. You cannot force peace. You cultivate it by abiding. Jesus said, "Abide in me," not perform, not react. Abide. When you stay rooted in him, the storms still come, but they don't uproot you. I won't pretend this means you never feel anger again, but it means anger no longer owns you. It becomes something you notice, examine, and release instead of something you obey. The Bible does not promise a life where people stop testing you. It promises a life where their actions no longer define you. There is a quiet confidence that comes when you realize you don't have to respond to everything. Proverbs says, "It is to one's glory to overlook an offense." Glory, not weakness. That is when anger loses its grip, when you realize peace is not something you protect from people. It is something God produces within you. And here's the unsettling truth that leads into what comes next. The Bible makes it clear that anger doesn't just disappear because you want it gone. It fades as something deeper takes its place. Something stronger than emotion. Something rooted in trust. The real question is what kind of heart no longer needs to react, no longer needs to be provoked, no longer needs to defend itself. The answer is a heart fully anchored in God, one that trusts so completely, rests so deeply, and loves so radically that anger simply cannot take root. It is a heart transformed from the inside out, where peace is not fleeting, patience is not forced, and love flows even when the world conspires to steal it. This is not theory. It is not a goal you chase. It is the evidence of a spirit at work, quietly, persistently, undeniably, because a heart like this doesn't just resist anger. It obliterates it. It cannot be shaken, cannot be provoked, cannot be moved by offense, insult, or fear. It is not about controlling circumstances. It is about surrendering to a power far greater than any frustration, disappointment, or injustice. And that is the place where true freedom begins. No what-ifs, no exceptions, no loopholes. When God reigns fully in your heart, anger loses, forever,